because I'm excited, I'm going to sit back and introduce our moderator, who's going to handle the first part of our program, and that is Courtney Stadd. And Courtney Stadd is Vice President here at Beyond Earth Institute. And look, Courtney Stadd doesn't need a long introduction, but he's had 40 years of experience and, broad mix, senior government leadership, corporate executive jobs. He's been involved in Pathfinder space industries, and he has focused so strongly on the removal of policy and regulatory barriers for the emergence specifically of a commercial space marketplace. Multiple leadership positions, U.S. Department of Commerce, DOT, the White House. He's worked directly for 3 NASA administrators. Courtney's experience is immense, and we are grateful to have him as part of our team. And Courtney, I'm going to kick it over to you, introduce our distinguished speakers. And I, again, want to thank all of you here for being with us here at Beyond Earth's webinar on the commercial habitat marketplace. So Courtney, please take it away.
All right, Sean, thank you very much. And thank you for those overly kind introductory comments. I appreciate it. This section of the discussion we're about to have will be between me and a much valued friend and colleague, Phil McAlister, who is Director of Commercial Spaceflight Vision at NASA. If you want more details on his illustrious biography, just go to our website and you'll see it. It's suffice it to say that Phil McAlister's trajectory has very much been aligned to all the major milestones in commercial cargo, commercial crew, the space station, and as he'll get into in a few moments, he's got a lot of moving parts that fit into his portfolio. And we could not imagine a better person, right time, right place, to help set the tone for this timely and critical discussion that we're about to embark on. So Phil, thank you for your taking some time from, I know, a crazy and busy schedule. By the way, before I begin, I just want to remind our audience that we'll be reserving your much valued questions for the end of the session, so roughly about 3-ish or so. And also, as open as I know Phil and my other good friend from NASA, Dr. Alex McDonald, are very open to addressing any and all germane questions. We do ask that, as interested as you are regarding Russia and the ISS, they're really not authorized to speak to it, and their leadership has been pretty public about their views on the topic, and can be easily assessed, again, on the NASA website or directly from their folks in communications. Phil, I recall that, in fact, I very much recall when you made the transition from private sector to NASA headquarters 17 years ago, which is quite amazing. It seems like, I'm sure it may feel like 50 years, but for me, it feels just yesterday. As I mentioned, the arc of your career really has tracked so closely the emergence of the space marketplace. And now that you're division director for commercial space, as I say, it's so fitting to start with you and hear your views on the status of the emergence of these commercial space habitats in Earth orbit, whose executives will hold forth on their respective initiatives in a few moments. Just wonder if you could start, Phil, by describing the origins and the evolution of the commercial LEO development program.
Okay. I don't want to go back too far, but I think in terms of the current era of partnerships within NASA, it really did start with commercial cargo. We had partnerships before then. If you guys remember Dreamtime, they were going to digitize all NASA archival footage, the X-33, VentureStar partnership, Wake Shield. Most of those failed or were not successful, maybe that's a better way to put it, in my opinion, because we put too much responsibility over on the private sector. And we didn't, at NASA, in my opinion, have a really good feel for what a partnership looks like, and the fact that you need to hit that sweet spot between what will work for your private sector partner and what will also work for the government. And I think that was one of the advantages when I transitioned into NASA. As you mentioned, Courtney, I had about 20 years of experience in the private sector, so I knew how they thought, kind of what the culture was in some of these companies, what incentivizes them. And that allowed us early on in the commercial cargo program to set up a partnership that I think was appropriately balanced between risk and reward and resources and technical capability between the two entities so that we really did hit that sweet spot. And I think that was the real, in my opinion, beginning of this current sort of age of partnership and commercial activity in the United States. It was 2005, we started. It was a program that I like to say kind of flew under the radar screen. We had a very big program of record, the Constellation program. So COTS was only a $500 million program and didn't really attract a whole lot of attention, which gave us a lot of autonomy.
I was about to say, that's probably a good thing.
Yes, yes. We didn't need the big landing party that normally comes with NASA at that point. We really needed the partners to have the freedom to innovate and come up with new ways of doing business. We did not dictate launch vehicle, launch pad, kind of propulsion structures, that was all the decision making of the partners. That's a huge change. For 40 years of NASA's history, we had been in charge, making the decisions, and private sector would just implement them. And in a partnership model, you are sharing those sorts of things. And since the companies were owning the intellectual property, it made sense for them to not only make the decisions, but also contribute to the financial success of these companies, these initiatives, and that gave them skin in the game, which kept them in when things started getting tough, as they always will. So it was kind of nice being under the radar screen in that time. And then we doubled down, as I like to call it, in commercial crew. At that time, if you remember, in 2010, commercial cargo hadn't even flown. But yet we had hit a series of milestones that within the federal government, within the policy making circles here in DC, it had increased the confidence level associated with that kind of partnership. And then the Augustine panel came out and kind of really gave an endorsement to commercial crew, and then it was in the budget. And I had a lot of feedback from our stakeholders about how this was maybe not the best idea. And the corner really turned, Courtney, in my opinion, in 2012 when SpaceX flew that first mission to the ISS. So that was the start. And I think we needed cargo, obviously, but subsequently, SpaceX and Orbital Sciences, now Northrop Grumman, they never sold a complete cargo mission to low Earth orbit to anybody other than NASA. And I think looking back on it, maybe we were a little naive, but if you're going to have a cargo mission, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You need people up there to do the experiments, and then you need a destination for them to do it in. And so now we've got cargo. We've just gotten crew certified. We'll get Boeing over the finish line here soon. And now we're on to destinations. And I'm so excited about this possibility. We're putting all three of those the legs of those stools together. And I think when you have cargo, crew, and destinations, NASA can really push all of most of LEO activity onto the private sector, and that will focus us on to the moon and Mars while still having a toehold in low Earth orbit. So that's the way I see things going. That's sort of the history in a nutshell for human spaceflight partnerships and how we got to destinations, I would say, Courtney.
Yeah. So given your history, given the learning curve we've gone through, did you feel with the proposals now that they've been awarded by the agency, the Blue Origin, of course, we've got Dr. Wagner, Northrop Grumman, Nanoracks, Adrian from Voyager Space, and you've got the separate emergence of Axiom Space. Where you're sitting, has industry stood up? In your judgment, what impressed you, if I may put it that way, the most about the proposals that were submitted?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we got a significant interest from the commercial LEO destinations, funded Space Act Agreement proposals that came in. 11 companies, which really gave us confidence that our acquisition strategy was good, our partnership strategy was good. If you only get one or two bidders, you may have to question it. But we got 11 credible concepts. With enough time and money, I think probably all of them could have been successful. They weren't breaking the law of physics or anything like that. So very, very pleased that at this point in time, we have 11 companies, or somewhere around 11, maybe not all of them, but close to 11 companies that are technically and financially capable with concepts to do commercial LEO destinations. 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that would not have been the case, Courtney. And these are companies that are looking for business opportunities. They're not necessarily looking for this to be a government contractor only. They're not just building another space station, they're creating an industry. And so that, of which we are going to be part of, but what I keep telling our CLD partners is don't look to the government to close your business case. You have to close that business case on business opportunities. We will be your anchor tenant at some level and some percentage of your utilization, but we want fixed price contracts. We're going to have a defined set of services that we want to buy. And that's what has impressed me the most, the diversity of the kinds of concepts that we got. And now the portfolio, which I think you'll show a slide in a little bit, very, very pleased about the portfolio. They all have their strengths and weaknesses, but together as a portfolio, I really am very confident that more than one, at least two, hopefully, will come to fruition. And soon, hopefully before the end of this decade, which is amazingly fast if you think about it, we will be able to purchase services for destinations in low Earth orbit.
Those of us who've been in this business for 40 plus years, it can't come fast enough, but point taken. Arnie, I wonder if we could show that chart that Phil very kindly provided. It's coming up, Phil, I think. Yeah, here we are. Want to talk to it for a second, Phil? You have already, but is there anything that...
Yeah, I can tell you that we had the kickoff meetings to the Funded Space Act agreements that we did. That's with Blue Origin, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman in January. And the people in those companies, they were like vibrating with excitement, Courtney. And that, I got to tell you, it reinvigorated me. Being at NASA and being in DC, that can be a grind sometimes. But to see these people that were so just ready to just come out of the gate like a thoroughbred horse racer and get involved and start working the maturity and designing their systems, it was just really great. And of course, Axiom had been doing that now for almost 2 years. We awarded that contract a couple of years ago. So they have gotten pretty far along in their development. They just had their, you can see some of the stats there. They had their preliminary design review, their HAD module last summer. They're going to come up with a CDR, or the critical design review, this summer. And you can see some very, very aggressive schedules. 2027, it's 5 years from now. 2029. I mean, those are, we've sort of gotten used to seeing very aggressive schedules, and I think that's a good thing. But these definitely are going to have challenges, and we're going to have to work through those. But as a portfolio, you can see we've got inflatables, we've got cylindrical metallic structures, we've got different kinds of power capability, different markets that they are also eyeing. Some of these will be better for some markets, some will be better for others. And I think that's just what you want to have at this early stage of the life cycle. Got to let them fight it out, see which ones markets really want come to fruition, where they can get the best investment, because those investors are going to be very savvy about the markets. And so you can just see across the board a variety of concepts that, and we like to see that at this stage. We had 4 or 5 in the very first round of Commercial Crew, and they kind of weeded out as time, and then we ended up with 2. I hope to see a similar sort of situation with destinations, but we'll see how it plays out. Depends on funding, depends on their technical performance, depends on a lot of things. We'll see how that plays out.
The younger people in the audience who just joined this community the last couple of years, it's phenomenal to see what progress has been made. It's absolutely phenomenal. To help also set the tone for the ensuing conversation, you've been so part of the transition to more of a commercial oriented agency. And I just wonder what you see. Again, you've alluded to some of it, but I wonder if we could dig a little deeper into some of the policy and perhaps even some of the regulatory issues that you foresee as NASA shifts from being the primary contractor, owner, manager, to more of that customer relationship that we've seen on the commercial satellite side, for example, and now clearly in the commercial habitat domain as we shift to it. So what do you still see as some of the outstanding issues, at least maybe give us a few appetizers as you see it?
Yeah, so I would say we're not ready, Courtney. We have some heavy lifting that needs to happen on the regulatory side in order to make this vision a reality. From NASA's standpoint, our vision, 2 weeks ago, I bought a ticket on American Airlines. I went down to JSC, I did my business, came back. There's a lot of people on that aircraft, but NASA didn't do anything to check the aircraft airworthiness or anything like that. We hope, my vision, and I think NASA's vision, is long-term. That's what will happen in low Earth orbit. I will buy a ticket. I'll be on a spacecraft with other people. I'll go up to the LEO destination, I'll do my work, I will come back. And NASA will not be involved in the regulations of that industry. That is where we are trying to get to. It might take another maybe generation of systems. We are not ready for that at all today, Courtney. What people don't realize, I think, is the amount of work that NASA has done to enable cargo and crew. We acquire the spectrum. We allow them to use not a trivial amount of government resources. We arrange for the DoD rescue forces. All that has to be done without NASA. And we want to get out of that business. And the rest, we need a whole of government approach. That's kind of the catchword that you might hear more and more, those in industry. We need a whole of government approach to this, because NASA is not going to do this in the future. And we shouldn't be doing this in the future. We're not a regulatory agency. We're an exploration agency. And yet we've had to, because there haven't been any other agencies and we have a mission to perform, we've had to fill in those blanks. We filled in with our human rating requirements and our certification strategies, but that is not what we should be doing. We need those physical and financial capital so that we can do the moon and Mars, the things that we may not have an economic incentive for. In a lot of ways, Courtney, let's go back to memory lane. It reminds me of the early 80s when Deke Slayton was going around with his Conestoga launch vehicle concept. Right. He had to go to 7 federal agencies, all of which had to say yes, any one of which could say no, and he was not going to be able to launch if they did. We just had this patchwork of regulatory functions. And then we stood up FAA, Office of Commercial Space Transportation, that did the licensing. And I think that was a key thing in the overall regulatory. I think you were involved in some of that early stuff.
I very much so was, yeah. And I'm about to, if you don't mind, Mike, just adding something there. I wish it was only 7. I was actually a competitor of the great late Deke Slayton with another rocket company. And he and I were dealing with 15 or 16 agencies, all of whom could say no. And of course, that ultimately did lead to a lead agency model. A lot of antibodies came out of the government system, fighting us at that point. But you're right. I think that is in many ways a good model for hopefully where we're going in the future.
Once AST was established, it became very clear, right? As an investor, the risk goes down considerably. When you have one-stop shop, you know what that license is, you know what the requirements are. We need a similar thing today, I believe, Courtney, in moving, as NASA moves, we can't have a void. We can't have this, vacuum, no pun intended, when we sort of pull out of this, but we very much want to do that. So I think there's some heavy lifting. I think that's where Beyond Earth has a role. I think everybody in the industry has a role, and we all are going to need to make that happen because I can tell you we are committed to extricating ourselves from that kind of function going forward.
Going to hold you to that, Phil.
Today.
Thank you. Phil, thank you very, very much. This was exactly what we were hoping to focus on as our preamble to the next segment of this conversation. We thank you in advance for holding on and participating in the discussion that's about to ensue. So at this point, let me throw it back to Sean, Steve, right? Sean, thank you very much. I'm going to go on mute and look forward to the next segment.